Ransomware crime wave, which has been pummeling businesses, cities, and police departments left and right for the last few years, hit a grim new milestone recently with the first high-profile attacks on U.S. critical infrastructure. Between the attacks on Colonial Pipeline and GBS, which disrupted nearly half of the East Coast gasoline supply for a week and threatened 20% of the U.S. meat market, respectfully, consumers are finally experiencing the first physical impacts to their daily lives from cyber attacks. As bad as these attacks are, they could get a lot worse. Cybercriminals are constantly evolving, and what is keeping many security professionals up at night is the growing risk of Jackware, a new type of ransomware that can be 10 times more dangerous because instead of encrypting Windows, computers, and services, Jackware hijacks the actual physical devices and machines that make modern-day life possible. It's only a matter of when we will see these attacks happen. A few lines of code can disable a machine. Malware is generally something that only affects computers, but over the last 20 years, there has been a boom in the development of tiny computers that add connectively and smart features to every type of machine and device you can imagine. These tiny computers are known as embedded devices, and they now play a key role in critical infrastructure, cars, mass transit, healthcare, office buildings, and even the home. And just like a desktop computer, embedded devices are also vulnerable to malware. However, the difference between hacking a computer and hacking an embedded device is that the latter has direct physical consequences. The reason why Jackware is so dangerous is that it can shut down these embedded devices, crippling the larger physical machine. That means cyber attacks would lead to even worse disruptions in critical services and supplies than what we've seen thus far with ransomware, while also potentially causing permanent physical damage to these systems and even putting people's lives in danger. For instance, if malware disrupts an electronic control unit (ECU) in a car, it could cause the brakes to malfunction or prevent the engine from starting, effectively breaking the car. It could break a $1 million MRI machine, it could cause a pipeline to shut down for months, or trigger a fire or explosion at an electronic substation. Subways may not run, airplanes may not be able to take off, even buildings can be sabotaged because they rely on automation systems to operate. Here are 4 attack scenarios. Number 1. Crippling a major company. We've already seen how disruptive traditional ransomware can be, simply by encrypting front-end office IT systems. However, these attacks would pale in comparison to the damage, costs, and downtime that could be created by a Jackware infection of physical processes and machinery. These attacks would be worse because they would bring operations to a complete standstill. Equipment could be permanently damaged, physical injuries could occur, and removing the malware could be more difficult than it is with a traditional IT system. The biggest risk is to manufacturers, processing plants, electric and water utilities, oil and gas companies, and shipping. Number 2. The forced update attack. For several years, hackers have increasingly targeted software vendors and supply chains, like SolarWinds and MageCart, as a way of hacking numerous victims by only having to breach a single company. This tactic could also be used with Jackware. If hackers breach an IoT manufacturer, they could potentially use that access to push malicious firmware updates to that company's products. This is a threat that needs to be taken seriously, as it could have an enormous impact. For instance, if hackers breach a car maker or a dealership, they could potentially brick hundreds or even thousands of vehicles at one time by forcing the cars to install Jackware. Number 3. Hijacking mass transit. Criminal hackers have already proven how easy it is for them to breach public transportation agencies. In recent years, they've also used ransomware to disrupt services in Fort Worth, San Francisco, Vancouver, and other cities, and even hit Cleveland's airport in 2019. Hackers can use these same methods to instill even greater damage if they can affect the actual physical systems with Jackware. All mass transit systems today, from buses to trains, subways, and airplanes, rely on some level of embedded devices to manage important functions, and they will become increasingly autonomous in the years ahead. By encrypting these embedded devices, an attacker could render the vehicle inoperable. Number 4. Infecting medical devices. Since the pandemic began, hospitals have been heavily targeted with ransomware. These cyber attacks have been highly disruptive, but in most cases they haven't interfered with actual medical treatments. That will change with Jackware. Medical devices like MRIs, X-rays, ventilators, etc. often run on outdated software and firmware with unpatched vulnerabilities. Hospitals also frequently fail to isolate these devices from the main network, leaving them exposed to cyber attacks. Once Jackware becomes more widely available in the criminal underworld, it would be easy for hackers to breach a hospital's main network and push Jackware to life-saving medical equipment. This would bring all treatments to a standstill and put patients' lives at risk. Unfortunately, cyber threats aren't going away anytime soon, and the problem is it's going to get worse before it gets better. These attacks will continue because it's easy for hackers to find insecure companies and exploit them. The US government will have a hard time stopping them because anytime you eliminate one hacking group, 5 more are ready to take its place. What this means for the average person is that you should start preparing for occasional disruptions in your daily life, from supplies at the grocery store to energy, water, banking services, and any connected device you rely on. Investors also need to be wary about the effect these attacks could have on stocks, IPOs, long-term corporate values, and the cryptocurrency market. Well, that's it for the video. Gian reports signing off.